Hi everybody, and welcome to our first lesson looking at the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Now, what we're going to focus on today is the contextual background of the novella. So all of the factors that were influencing Robert Louis Stevenson in 1885 when he decided to write and publish this story. Now, remember, it's very important that we do have a good understanding of those key contextual factors because we get marks for them. That's our AO3. But it also really helps us to understand what that book is about and why certain things are included. So I'd recommend getting yourself your exercise book or some paper to make some notes, and it's entirely up to you how you organise them, but I'd recommend a good old Google search after this to see what other details you can find out. Something like the British Library's website is great, and the sorts of things that you want to be looking up are to do with the setting, which is London, so the capital city. So you want to be looking at what that's like in the 1800s, the late end of the 1800s, the Victorian time period. You want to be looking at gentlemen and reputation and the expected code of conduct. You want to be looking at science, so the scientific advancement that's happening and then how that's impacting on religion. And you also want to be looking at how they treated the criminals and the insane in this time period. So let's start with a focus on London. It was a city that grew absolutely enormously. It's a global city of immense importance, and obviously it's the capital of the British Empire. It had been the largest city actually in the world since 1825 and was well known for having the largest ports, railways, roads and modern sewage systems. So if you watch Horrible Histories, and you'll get a little bit more information. However, it was a city of massive contrasts, and what we need to be aware of is that in some areas the underclass were absolutely desperately poor. They were overcrowding. These were our criminal classes where depravity and debauchery ran rife, and it was nowhere more than in the east area of London. Now, another focus that we need to be aware of is that of the Victorian Gentleman. And in particular, we need to have a look at that strict code of conduct. And we need to be thinking about the fact that outside of their homes, their reputation was maintained at all costs. So this meant that they had particular things they had to wear, particular way that they had to conduct themselves. There was expectations of how they would meet and treat each other, as well as how they would meet and treat ladies. And obviously, this determined how they were seen in society. So again, this created a massive contrast between the rich and the poor and the expectations of how to behave. The next key area that we want to focus on is that of the advancements in science and technology. And this was a time period where everything was rapidly growing, seen as a time of knowledge and discovery and enlightenment. This is the time period where we've got engineering happening. So this is where the first automobiles created. You've got key figures like Louis Pasteur, Charles Darwin, Freud. And what we've got to be thinking about is that if we're moving ahead really quickly with science, then there are other things that are going to be questioned in the light of that. Now, it's a key topic for lots of novels produced in the 1800s. So stories such as Frankenstein, for example, that really start to question just where science would end and where mankind would learn lessons from. Now, alongside science runs the belief in Christianity. And Christianity had long been a practice in our country for centuries. So it was something that was really embedded, and it was a system of kind of keeping society in their place, but also of offering comfort and hope. And a lot of the rules and expectations that we have even till today came from ideas put out through the Bible. So with all of the advancement in science, you've got a real conflict between these two. You've got scientists like Charles Darwin thinking about evolution and the Big Bang Theory, and you've got to begin to question that if you believe in science, can you actually believe in God and Christianity? Now, the next focus that I want us to find a little bit more information out about is how we treated the criminal class and also those who were classified as insane in the late 1800s. We've got a time period of real kind of prejudice and stereotyping and a lot of experimental and, in some cases, what we would now call downright cruel treatment of those who we see as different or lesser in society. In particular, if you have a look into some of the leading scientists of the time, there was lots of things that they were putting in place for criminal profiling, but also for their cures of what we would now term as mental health issues. So have a little look into that in a bit more detail. Now, the final person I want you to do a little bit of research for me on is the author himself, Robert Louis Stevenson. I want you to do a little bit of a focus on a few things for me here. I want you to look firstly into the fact that he is now seen as a Gothicist. So do a little bit of research and find out what key Gothic features are, what Gothic tropes are that they would expect in literature, because he uses many of these in Jekyll and Hyde. He's also seen very much as a historian, an anthropologist, and a Victorian postmodernist. So we're expecting this story to be quite experimental, to have things in there that wouldn't have been in traditional literature. Now, he's born in Scotland and he's very educated, goes to university, does engineering and then moves into law, and then he actually becomes a published author. Now, he's really interested in a couple of key people of his own time period. So you might want to have a little bit more research into William Brodie, who is a criminal cabinet maker, and a look into Vivette, who was one of the first patients ever to display and be diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. Now, when you've finished, you should have something that looks a little bit like this, but you can make it as pretty as you want. You can add pictures, you can add details, or if you just want to set it out as separate lists, entirely up to you, but it'll be really useful. And I will see you tomorrow, where we will start having a look at chapter 1. Take care and keep safe.